virtually, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Kincaid.
Thank you. We are on YouTube again, live, right now. Scott and Brian are here with me, so we're on YouTube again live, and I think last time we had 4 viewers. So,
all right,
more than average.
Yeah, we had 4 people watching but 3 of them I think were sitting here. So
was one of them Paul?
No, I think we had one outside viewer. Hey, we have some. I'm going to allow Matt to kind of give the news of our virtual graduation proposal. What we've come up with, what we think is a really good plan for kind of a hybrid approach to a commencement. So we'll do that a little bit later, but Ed has some budget information, treasurer's report, and fund balance plan to review. And he's put some options together based on some best guess scenarios for next year. I'll let Ed explain that to you. Hey, Ed.
Hey, thanks, Eric. I'm going to present my screen, see if this works out. So hopefully you can see my screen right now.
Nope.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's up, Ed. You have the
Just have to
you have the
maximize
document
it.
up yet.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Is it your full screen or is it just a small window?
No, you're up there. It's just your screen of the tiles right now.
Okay. All right. So
There you go.
let me jump to the PowerPoint. This is out on the shared folder. You don't really need to open it. I'm going to kind of go through it here. The board meeting material folder. I just want to show you this real quick here, if I can. So in the May 4th folder, we've got 2020-2021 budget. And in there, I have a binder, which is the budget book. So this is the proposed final budget. And you don't need to open it, but the very first page kind of gives you an overview of the changes made in this budget. A lot of changes, and I'll cover those in just a bit here. But it gives you a good overview there. There's also in this folder some federal stimulus money that just became available. The allocation came out from the state. So I have that here. You can take a look at that at some point. Fairview's allocation is about $113,000. This comes from the CARES Act funding. Also, the State Association of Business Managers did a study where they looked at the revenue projections for next year for every district in the state. And I'll talk about that for a few minutes too. So that's here as well. And I think that's pretty much it. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. So the treasurer's report, we're looking at the period ended April 30. And I have the general fund up here right now. It's a pretty typical month. We're not going to see too much impact from the shutdown this year, as I talked about before. EIT slowed a little bit, but that's not as a result of the shutdown. It is still a little bit ahead of last year's pace in the top right here, about 7,800 ahead of last year's pace. We did have some good news with Norbit. We got a good surplus for the month of March, and I'll show that to you pretty quick here. So here's the updated Norbit graph. You can see on the far right here. So claims are very low, and this is because we received some reimbursement from the second level of insurance. So when we pay claims, we pay the first $58,000 of each claim. Any claim that goes over $58,000 is covered by what we call the mini pool. And that mini pool covers claims from $58,000 to $300,000. That's what's happening in March. So when you look at the statement, which I've given you a copy of in the folder, and you look at the March column, last column on the right-hand side there, down towards the middle of the page, you'll see M-P reimburse. That's the mini pool. And you can see from March, that's 207,000. So that reduced our claims of 194,138. So that led to a pretty good surplus for the month. So the second level of insurance helped us during the month there. Also, you'll see the purple line is the number of months. It uses the right scale, and we now have 9 months in our balance. So one of the sources of funds I'm going to use to balance the budget, you'll see this in a minute, is a 1-month funding holiday from Norbit. So that's just a quick overview of Norbit. EIT, this is the graph. You can see April. It's kind of where it's towards the bottom, kind of where it's been historically. May will be the interesting month. So early part of June, that first meeting in June, we'll review May, and we'll get an idea of collections at that point in time. Should be fairly high. These are the investments for April. 19,177,000. Those are down about 910,000. You can see the summary on the right-hand side here. General fund's down 770,000. You can see the breakout of general fund up here, 8.4 million is the total. The First National Bank money market account at 1.65. That's the rate through April 30. I do not have an updated rate for May 1st. They haven't released it yet. So I'll get that to you as soon as we hear. Otherwise, you'll see we've got the CD and the general fund at First National Bank, 1.9%. That runs through the end of December. So that'll help us next year a little bit with interest earnings. Cap Projects Fund, we broke this out to the various years that these CDs mature. So you can see the various levels there, or layers of CDs. You can see for next year, we have 3 million maturing in that range of 1.2 to 2.8. And you can see the year after, 500,000. And in the 23-24 year, we have 250,000. So you can see the total there. We do have some of our money at First National Bank for cap projects. You can see that's at 1.65. And then below that, the district retirement benefit account and food service. So those are the investments. Cap projects, total of 9,896,000. So the project total expending so far this year has been 921,608. We have one other large purchase, which will be switches and routers for the network infrastructure. That's about 203,000. So we'll be right around 1.1 million or so total for the year, which is where our budget is for this year. The district retirement benefit account balance 746,402. The cafeteria fund, you can see the activity there. So beginning the middle of March, we began the shutdown, and families began at that point to pick up lunches. Initially at Weiss Library, at Millfair and Hershey. We moved it to the middle school a few weeks later, and it's been there since. So we've had about a month and a half of families picking up lunches at the two locations. The federal government's covering the cost of all lunches, and of course, we're including breakfast since the shutdown. That's a first for us, and they're including the cost of breakfast as well. So you'll see in the reporting in just a minute here. So the government calls it the seamless summer option. And for those lunches and breakfasts that we serve, we get the subsidy, which is the same as the pre-subsidy, $3.48, plus $1.84 for the breakfast, and then 10 cents for the state subsidy. So since March 16, I think March 17 was the first day, we have served 8,619 lunches, 8,275 breakfasts at that point. And then this is the April activity here. We'll get subsidy of about 39,000 for April. And when you look at the report, when you look at current month for April, you won't see any daily lunch sales, a la carte, adult, any of that. You'll just see subsidy down here. And you'll see the federal subsidy is higher than it typically is. So as compared to last year, 37,000, almost 38,000 compared to 20,000 last year. So our revenue is only going to show up here for April and May. And I think we're going to attempt to serve through the end of June. So we're able to do that. It's our option. And the federal government will continue to pay for those lunches and breakfasts through the end of June. That's the plan right now, as long as we can get enough staff to make that happen.
And is there any concern about getting the staff to do that? And is there any issue with getting the food or not serving everyone you need?
So there's challenges in both areas. The staff, they're starting to get a little burned out, although we have 2 teams and they're taking a week off. So it's week on, week off. And they think they can cover through the end of June. I think we'll be okay with staff. And then as far as food supply, it's been challenging there as well. I think maybe last board meeting I explained that we had, in some cases, items we have to buy in bulk, and then we have to put in smaller containers. And in most days or lately, it's been 350 to 400, lunches a day. So it's a pretty intense process for that staff. I think we're going to be okay in both areas. Lori is struggling to get enough different kinds of food to serve for breakfast and lunch, but so far she's been able to. In some cases, our supplier, which I think is U.S. Food Service, they're getting into the fall inventory that they have on hand now to supply districts with the food items they need. So they're starting to dig into the fall inventory. So I'm not sure if we'll see an impact there. Certainly something that we'll keep an eye on as we go here.
And do we pay them, or does that come out of federal money as well?
So we pay the food suppliers directly.
No, I mean the staff. The staff.
Yes, we pay the staff, yes.
Okay. So if we go through June, would that be something that we did not have in the budget?
Right. That's exactly right. So our budget goes through the last day of the school year based on our calendar. Of course, we'll pay staff after the last day of the school year and through June 30. We'll also get subsidy for that time period as well. So hopefully it'll be enough to break even, during that time. One other, let's see. Here's the student activity accounts. Oops. 51,000 for the high school and 2,000 for the middle school. Student membership just dropped 1 in April, 1,805. Just one other update here on kindergarten. Whoops. I thought I had the new graph in here. So the latest information for April is 90 is the enrollment number for kindergarten. That should show up right here. So a little higher than last year. Something we'll continue to watch there as well. So that is the treasurer's report. Are there any questions on any of those slides before I move on to fund balance plan?
I had a interesting question that I wanted to share with the group today. It's probably a good time when you're talking about enrollment. I think I need to do a better job of educating our community on something because I got a question today from a mom, and she said, hey, do you think maybe we should be encouraging people to sign up for PA Cyber Charter School to take some of the pressure off of our teachers since they already have a platform for it? So I think we need to educate folks that, PA Cyber and any other cyber charter school is not our school, and it is a public school that they could attend, but they wouldn't be attending Fairview any longer. So that was kind of scary. I told her absolutely not. If you go to PA Cyber Charter, you're no longer a Fairview student. So we'll make sure we address that moving forward here so folks don't get the wrong idea.
Eric, I have heard very similar things as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and present.
Hey, Ed, on the enrollment numbers, so you said that jumped by 10 for the kindergarten. Was that people moving in or were they switching out of other kindergartens? I mean, that's a pretty big spike. Seems like for 1 month.
We really don't know. The Ed Barnes theory is that families have time now to enroll, and I think they're getting to it quicker. Who knows?
Oh, so
Something we'll have
that's
to
just
watch.
enrollments for next year, or that was an increase in the current kindergarten class?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's for next year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, so David, what we're doing there is you're seeing a comparison of what the enrollment was at this time last year
Got it.
versus this time this year. But our registrar, Jonathan Valentine, he's pretty good at predicting and making making a prediction of where we'll be at the start of the year. But he doesn't want us to base this year's numbers at this time necessarily off of last year's numbers at this time for a couple of reasons. One, what Ed just said, people have a lot of time on their hands right now. And two, we got the process started a little bit earlier this year. And it was a little more, it was a little easier for folks to get online and do that. So that could have impacted a little bit the numbers. But 90 right now, that's a pretty strong number already for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to go back and present the PowerPoint.
What? No.
So the fund balance plan for 2018-19. So each year we look at the ending revenues and expenditures, and the difference is either a surplus or a deficit. This past year, 18-19, we had a surplus of $1,359,844. Some of you probably haven't seen this yet, those that came in December. Anyway, this is a surplus from last year. Historically, at least the last few years, we have been transferring the surplus to cap projects, and that helps us fund the high school renovation, the elementary pod project, and anything else we do, from that fund. So it just adds to our balance there. The actual detail behind that, I'm not going to go through this, but I have it. I have the report on the shared folder if you want to go through it. But what I do is I show a detail of the various revenues, the budget versus the actual amount, and I have them sorted most favorable to least favorable. So you can see for 18-19, we had revenues in excess of budget of $417,000. And then on the spending side, again, most favorable to least favorable at the bottom, we had a favorable difference for medical claims, educational services, and on down the line. Net for spending is under budget by $925,000. The plan was to be over budget by about $1 million or so. So that led to our surplus for the year. And so this $1,359,000 will show up as a motion on the 18th. Yeah, we'll have a motion on the 18th to transfer these funds to cap projects. Questions on that before I move on?
I have one. This is Fran. I thought we were already at 11 million. Or were we just under? Because adding 13, we're adding 1,359,000, 1,360,000 to that, I thought would have brought us closer to 12 million. Or we are 13 million, I guess I should say. Because I thought it was at 11.
Our balance right now, Fran, is 9,896,000.
Okay.
And take a couple $100,000 away from that, we'll be at, say, 9.6. We'll add about 1.3 to it. So,
no, I had that number in my head, but okay, thanks.
Yeah.
This is Alan. Fran, I had the same thought in my head, and it probably was based on Ed's projection for the end of this year. Because I think that's what I was thinking of too, that we're between 11 and 12 million. But I think that was as projected, which is where we're going to be. So I was
Makes sense.
thinking along the same lines.
Thanks.
So if you do the math that I just gave you, my note there on the slide says 11,000,008 less the projects for this year, gets you to about 10,9, 10,8. I mean, just shy of 11, and that's about where we're going to be for the year.
And that's what I recall going into, assuming the project was going, starting this summer, we would be starting with 11.
Right.
And that's what had been projected. Is that right, Ed?
That is correct.
Thanks.
So I'm going to move on to the agenda item 3, proposed final budget. So you might recall from the discussion last meeting, you need to entertain a proposed final budget by the end of May and a final budget by the end of June. So our dates are going to be May 18 is our second meeting, and then the second meeting in June will be the final adoption. So that's kind of the timetable we're looking at. I did cover this with you last time. So the CARES Act funding, that's what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, 113,973. It's federal money. They're using the Title I allocation, which is based on the free and reduced population in the district. That gives Fairview this amount. There's a spreadsheet in the shared folder if you want to see all their districts in the county. You want to see how much they're getting. I believe this is designed to be 2021 money, so next year. Also in the shared folder, there is a document that explains, it's the application from the state to the federal government, and it explains ways we can use the money. There's a number of ways. There's about 10 or 12 different uses listed in that document. And the administration will be working on a plan that will bring forward. It may end up being used to plug the deficit that we're expecting for next year, the drop in revenue, but more to come on that item. So if you look at the PASBO, the State Association of Business Managers, that study I mentioned earlier, they're looking at two scenarios: a range for Fairview, a drop in revenue of 900,000 to just over $1 million. And I came up with these three scenarios: best case, scenario 2, and worst case, range of 200,000 to $1.3 million. And what I did for the proposed final budget is I went to scenario 2, a drop in revenue of 750,000. And what that involves is increasing the real estate tax to the Act 1 index of 3.2%, taking the Norwood funding holiday. That equates to 179,000, reducing spending by 100,000. Now this could be in a number of different areas. The most common targets there would be supplies and travel, but it could be equipment, it could be some other areas too. Those aren't defined at this point. And then committed fund balance is our savings account, and I'm showing 336,000 of the $1,494,000 that we have in that account at this point in time. So that's how we balance it. As far as the shortfall in revenue, here's what I'm doing. So I'm reducing the collection rate on real estate taxes from 95.8% to 95%. That accounts for 145,000. I reduced earned income taxes by 15%, If you look at the 2008 recession and the impact that had on revenues for our area, we lost about 13% the year after the recession. This seems to be a little bit more severe than the 2008 recession. It's all happening much quicker. So, for example, if you look at the unemployment claims across the country, to get to 30 million took a lot longer than it took this year for the shutdown. So what happened in the last 6 weeks happened over 18 months to 3 years last time, depending on the metric you look at. Anyway, that reduction in EIT accounts for 257,000. I reduced interest on investments by 58,000. So rates are going down pretty fast. The last 2 weeks, they've dropped. Just an example, CD rates have gone from 1 to 1.25 down to 0.5% or less. They're dropping quickly. So it was middle of April. We picked up a couple CDs for the Cap Projects Fund at 1 to 1.25, but it's dropped down that fast. So reduction to interest of 58,000 there. Basic education subsidy, I'm dropping 240,000. I don't see a lot of business managers doing this yet. And I'm not really sure how that doesn't happen unless we get more federal stimulus money to kind of bridge the gap here. But if you look at the 2008 recession, the impact at the state level, we lost a couple 100,000 the next 2 years. And we were fortunate at that time to have federal stimulus money fill the gap. Have not seen that yet come through, other than the 113,000 I spoke about earlier. And then a reduction to delinquent taxes of 50,000. So that's the 750. That's the total decrease there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this is where we're going to pick up the sources of revenue or reduction in spending. And I went through these before. So that's really the proposed final budget. Those are the big changes to the budget. I still have all the things that are on that cover sheet. So there are still 3.5 additional employees. That would include an AS teacher, a 4th grade teacher, a half speech teacher, and our security officer that came over as an employee from a contract with the county. The 1 month funding holiday, that's a change from the March 2nd budget. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Oh, one other thing
And
I
I
want
have
to
a
cover.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we keep seeing that there's this possibility of a property tax freeze. Would that affect our ability to, is that us or is that not us?
That would be us. So that I've seen that proposed legislation. I'm not sure how much traction it's going to get. I know there's a lot of interest in it. It's a very partisan bill. I'm just not sure it's something the governor will ultimately sign if it passes both chambers. But yes, so the answer to the question is yes, it would limit and freeze our taxes at the current year's rate.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Sure. I want to cover one other thing. I worked with George to come up with a resolution. This is also in the folder. Let me bring it up here. So some of the state legislation that's passed allows districts to expand the face period for the property tax bill. So the way our tax bill is set up now, we have 2 months of rebate, July and August, 2 months of face period, September, October, and the 2 months of penalty. And what this resolution does is it extends the penalty. It reduces the penalty to 0 for 4 months. So September, October, November, December would be penalty-free face amount. The other thing this resolution does is it adds a 4th installment. So currently we allow for 3 installments. This is 4 installments. And those 2 changes I just explained would be for the 2021 school year. The installments would run, they're in item D, 1D here. So August through November. We could actually go 5 installments and take it through December. And then the penalty is covered here, item C. The face amount of the school tax with no discount or penalty imposed is due from September 1 until December 31. This is an option as a board. You can do this or not. What this resolution does is it makes those changes and then changes us back to the way it was in the 21-22 school year. So the penalty goes back in place, the 3 installments go back in place, as though nothing changed at that point in time. George, I know you're on. I'm not sure if there's a date by which they need to approve this.
There really isn't. When the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 841, it's now Act 15, they specifically excluded school districts, and you may have heard something about that. And that's because they were lobbied by PSBA, among other organizations, that school districts already had the ability to do this. If you look at the whereas clauses, I cite to the Taxpayer Relief Act, and that's the section that allows us to do that now. Senate Bill 841, Act 15, actually required municipalities and counties who had already levied and assessed their taxes in the winter, gave them 30 days to pass a resolution and to inform the tax collector. That's a little different than school districts. We're governed by this separate act, so we can do this in the normal course of our budgetary process and inform the tax collector. And Ed is correct that we can make installments. It can be no less than 3. It can be no more frequently than monthly. And we've historically done 3 installments, and this resolution, if the board is so inclined, would allow someone to do that in 4. A lot of the municipalities and the county was talking about the discount period, and they concluded that most of the tax was escrowed by mortgage companies, about 80% of them, and that there wasn't any benefit to the consumer from extending the discount period. But the benefit to the consumer was on the back end, on the penalty. So that's kind of why school districts are going this way and reducing or eliminating the penalty phase of the tax collection.
This is Alan. I have a question. If the penalty period has been dispensed of for the calendar year, why impose a 10% penalty on the installment payments if they go late?
So the installments.
Why not just have a penalty-free period through the year as opposed to imposing, let someone pay over 5 months, and then if they get to the end of the year and they haven't paid, then the penalty applies to the face amount?
That penalty, Alan, was intended to try to keep the taxpayer on schedule with those installment payments. That's really the only reason for it.
Is that is standard practice for when there is an installment, whether we're standard 3 or extended?
Yes. Yeah, that's the standard practice. Yeah. By the way, the penalty covered in item C doesn't need to be 0. It could be anything between 0 and 10%. So
I see.
That's correct.
I've seen some districts reduce it to 5%, so it doesn't need to go to 0.
Mhm.
In the past, I have a question. This is Eric. In the past, have you used that provision during the previous recession?
This didn't come up as an option in the 2008 recession.
Do
At
you
least that I
think
remember. Unless, George, you remember something that came up then.
I'm going to check the effective date. I have the section up on my computer here. Just give me a second. I don't think it was available, frankly, but
do you remember if that would have been a good thing for the community, or do you have a sense?
My sense is it would have been a good thing for the community. I think we have now probably a lot of people who have lost income, lost jobs, or reduced hours in their jobs, and would probably benefit from having a longer period over which to pay the regular tax amount without having to face a penalty.
yeah, and Ed was correct. The provision that we're talking about was enacted in 2011, so it wasn't available in the 2008 recession.
Okay, thank you.
This is Fran. Actually, I have a request and a question. The request that if you're not speaking, if you could please mute your microphone. We're getting a lot of background noise. And my question, though, is I think this is a great idea anytime we have taxes maybe over 3%. But why not do it all the time? Why not give people an option to pay it monthly or to pay it some other way, quarterly, whatever, without penalty, as long as they make a payment of a certain amount by a certain date?
So we do, Fran, each year provide for the 3 installment payments. So that's an option each year. We could change that. George, I don't recall offhand if the 3 installments we have currently can be expanded to 4 or 5.
It can, yes. Yeah, we can do that in the normal course. It has to be no fewer than 3.
Okay. And George, do we have the ability to eliminate the penalty for installments?
I believe we do, but let me take a quick look while we're talking here.
This is Alan again, because I really want to jump on that, Ed. Thank you for bringing that back up. I see no benefit to the district to impose a penalty on a late installment payment when there wouldn't be a penalty if you paid your full tax December 31st. If someone wants to break them up and over 5 months and does their best, and they get to the end of the year and they make it, and they're standing in the same position as someone who waited to write their check on the last day.
Makes sense.
And then the next day suffer a 10% penalty on the face amount. So I don't see a legitimate need to impose, assuming it's lawful, and we'll wait for George on that.
I have the answer, and what the statute says is that unpaid installments, or to each installment on the date becomes delinquent, a penalty of up to 10% shall be added. So it has no minimum, so it can be 0.
Okay.
Thanks, George. I personally, under these circumstances and this recession that's upon us and continuing, I see no reason to impose a penalty on someone who wants to break up their payments versus writing a check on the last day. I would propose we extend it to 5 months and we eliminate the installment penalty. Of course, impose the 10% on the face amount January 1st, 2021, if unpaid.
This is Fran. I agree, Alan. I think that, right now we give them installments, but they're 3 consecutive months. Even if it were every other month that they could pay, or once a quarter, that would give us a little more flexibility, I think, with a slightly higher tax rate with the construction happening over the next several years, that it wouldn't be as hard a hit to each family if they could make payments every other month or once a quarter without a penalty, as long as it was consistent.
Ed, Cindy Pacansky is probably the only one who knows this, but Do we have any sense for the percentage of our folks that escrow their taxes versus pay them on their own?
I have not heard.
And Eric, the only thing I would tell you is when they were talking about this at the county level, and they were actually looking at whether or not they were going to extend a discount, the rough number they were using was 80% of the taxes were escrowed.
Wow. Makes sense.
But if someone, this is Alan again, if someone defaults on their mortgage, they're going to stop making payments, and therefore their escrow is going to end up light by the time tax bills come out.
Yeah.
So you might see a significant dip in that number come fall when school tax bills come out.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Just FYI, the penalty portion of the payments made each year accounts for anywhere from 30 to 40,000. So it isn't a huge source of revenue for us. Pretty small.
What's the amount? This is Alan again. What do you have a budgeted amount for the penalty for next year?
It amounts to, like, historically, it's been in the range of 30 to 40,000.
Okay. Does anyone feel concerned about that loss of potential revenue?
This is Fran. I think in light of the taxes being over 3%, I think this is something that the community would appreciate, and maybe we wouldn't have the late taxes, but I still think that it's worth 30 to 40,000, giving that up to allow them to have a little more time to pay, and it might not be as negative, as big a negative impact on the school board for that.
Well, this is Alan again. I think the main premise of my position is that if we're going to excuse penalty for a one-time payer through December 31st, then we should excuse penalty for installment payers through December 31st. So regardless of the impact on the revenue line item for penalty, we're still dispensing of the penalty for everyone equally. It's just that for some folks, we're going to allow them to break it up to 5 payments, at least by my suggestion, up to 5 payments. And for others, we're going to allow it if they write their check on the last day. To me, that seems to be a fair, equal treatment of the taxpayers and the tax base. But yes, I mean, we probably will have penalties that get imposed January 1, and that might unfortunately result in that revenue line item showing some dollars.
Hey, Ed.
Yes.
When are tax payments received by the district? Does Cindy Pacansky hold on to those to the end, or are they received as they're paid?
So as payments are made beginning July 1st, she hangs on to them for about 7 days just to make sure the check's clear. And each week she brings a check. She basically deposits money for us. We don't see the check. She deposits money into our account and gives us the receipts. So it happens weekly, about a 7-day lag from the time the payment's made. And then the cycle for collection ends December 31. As of early January, she'll give us a final accounting of the taxes collected, and then she'll turn over any uncollected taxes to the county tax collection department.
Do you see any major downside in allowing this to happen?
No, I don't. I fully anticipate that the payments are going to come in slower than they typically have. I think our collection rate will be lower. And I think it's just going to take longer for some families to make those payments. It's part of the recession that we're in currently, and that'll be the impact of just people not having as much money as they used to.
Okay, thank you.
This is Jennifer. I'm just want to pipe in. I agree with Alan where you're going with that. You know, it gives people the option. Maybe you want to pay August, October, December, but you're still paying by the December 31st deadline without a penalty. And I think it just shows that we're being sensitive to what's going on around us. You know, even if it really only applies to 20% of people who don't escrow, it's one step we can take to show that we're aware of what's happening and doing what we can. So, I'm in favor of the change Alan's suggesting and moving forward with it.
I like that change.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to Fran's point about having the payments made quarterly or extending it beyond December 31. Unfortunately, by the statute, we don't have that luxury. We're kind of bound by that, and the absolute outside date is December 31, as Ed mentioned, because that's when the tax collector loses the ability to collect on the warrant that gets turned over as delinquent. I'll make the change in the resolution for next time then, Ed.
Okay. All right, we'll bring this back for a motion on the 18th, if that's good for the group.
Well, this is Alan again. Could I maybe give George and Ed a straw poll on amending paragraph 1D to go up to 5 months and eliminating the penalty language? I heard from myself and Fran and Jen. How about the rest of you? What are your thoughts?
Yes. Yes
I
from
agree.
Pam.
Yes from Eric.
Yes from Kelly.
Yes from Lori.
Yes from Jim.
Yes from David.
Okay. Is that everybody? I think so. So thanks, folks. That way we know going into our next, we have time on this, as George said. We could do this anytime right before the July 1 bills go out, but we might as well be good to have a message for the community to have it in place earlier than later. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea to get it done earlier, because then we can make the changes on the tax bills and get proofs run and just make sure everything looks okay.
And to get a public message out too. That would be nice.
Right, exactly. So just going back to the budget for a minute. So I took the tax increase from 2.4 to 3.2. This doesn't need to be 3.2. I mean, you can be lower than that. We would just need to take funds from other sources to get there. So you've got some options. Think about those. Really, the final decision has to be made at that second June meeting. We've got 2 more meetings now between now and then to hopefully get some new information. I don't know if that's going to happen, and to make a final allocation for next year.
This is Alan again. You know me, historically don't like leaving Act 1 money on the table, especially as we're looking forward to a building project, but I would like to see the number be 2.9 or less, be under the 3.0 mark. If we can find it elsewhere, that would be my suggestion.
I agree with you, Alan. This is Eric.
Does anyone else have a preference on the tax increase?
I also would agree with Alan. Thanks. This is Jim.
Kelly here. I agree, or even lower.
Oh, this is Fran. It would be nice to not be over the 3, although I thought we were going to be able to really get ahead this time through, but in light of everything going on, it's probably not a good time. So I would say not over 3%.
Yeah, I agree with Kelly. The lower that we can do this, the better at this stage of the game, just with everything that's going on and the effect that it's had on people. So however low we can do it to get by and to do what we need to do would be my thought.
And Kelly, again, I don't think this is over. I mean, what we're looking at right now, I think something could happen in the fall, further beyond that. And I don't know that we know what that looks like.
All right, thank you for that input. We can make the changes accordingly. We'll kind of watch for new information, and I'll bring that to you May 18 and then the first June meeting. Just a quick comment. I know, Eric, you probably want to make some comments about the FES architect contract. I do have the revised contract in the folder. So let me go back to it here. George has done a review of the FES contract. By the way, this just formalizes the agreement to have HHSDR design the new pod design for the elementary school. So we've talked about it verbally. There just hasn't been any formal action or contract that's been put in place for that project. So George has reviewed the contract. His comments are in a file in the shared folder. I also have the actual contract. It's called revised as of May 4th. So if you ever want to see that, and it covers the fees involved in the design work, and it comes out to 6% of the cost. And I think it's around 200,000, 210,000. And what we've told Vince is to do the work up until the point of bidding. We'd have about 3/4 of that 6% in at that point in time. I believe that amounts to about 150 to 160,000 in that range. That's the amount you'll have into it at that point in time. Then we can look at enrollment and make a determination if bidding is the right time, if it's the right time to do it this summer, or to wait for some later date to do the bidding.
As you know, Vince has been doing some of that work along the way. I think, there's an assumed risk there with the architect that they may or may not get paid for some work that they do, but he's had some informal meetings with the administration. We've talked about the plans there. So he's been working on that. We just haven't formalized a contract with him. Of course, we approve them annually as our architect of record, but then we get each individual project approved by the board as well. So that's the purpose of having the FES project approved.
Hey, this is Alan. Thanks, Eric. Could I jump back to Ed real quick?
Yep.
Yes.
Could I ask you a favor, Ed, for next time? This is not, I would like to see the Alan Natali slide for the 5-year.
Oh, yes.
For the 5-year,
Yeah.
5-year forecast period. I'd like to see lines at 0%, because obviously there's going to be a lot of public interest in that 0% state directive if that were to ever pass. I'd like to see the 5-year forecast period with a 0%, our original 2.4 with the added risks that you've factored in. 2.4, which was our original preliminary budget. 2.9 and 3.2, which would be the Ackman index. If you can plug those into the chart and to see,
Sure.
I'm gonna predict that you're not going to see a significant impact on the forecast from 3.2 to 2.9, but you may see help in the forecast from 2.9 versus 2.4, but you're going to see a drastic impact on the forecast from a 0. So working backwards from our Act 1 number, that would be really helpful. Kind of like what we did a couple of years ago, where we looked at, I think it was the purple line and the green line that were so close together, where we left some money on the table, but we had a better impact long term on the budget at or below the 3% range. So if you could do that, that would be really helpful to us, our discussion next time, for narrowing it down to a percentage rate.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Thanks, Ed.
Alan, we talk a lot about, we used to talk a lot about discretionary versus non-discretionary spending. And there isn't a lot of discretionary spending in the budget, but that's not to say that we can't go back and find some things as an administrative team. And we will do that. I mean, in order to get that, I agree with all of you that I think anything north of 3 would be a hard pill to swallow right now for the community. something closer to 2 is probably more advisable this time. So allow us to go back and look at some of that spending too, and see where we can't make some savings. We probably can't do that very much with personnel, but we can do it with some other things, supplies, travel, equipment, things of that nature. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the architect contract? That was item number 4. That'll be on for an official approval, formal approval on the 18th.
Yeah, I just as a final comment, I know the version came in from Ed and from Vince today, so I haven't had a chance to go through that, so I might be making some additional comments for next time.
Okay.
This is Fran. I do have a question on the architect. They do a great job for us. They really do. And as long as I've known, we've used them. But is that the going rate, like about 6%? And when is the last time we got competitive bids just to keep everybody honest?
Yeah, I can tell you, Fran, 6% is the going rate.
Okay.
I'm not sure you're going to find any architect that's going to underquote that.
Okay. I have no idea. So
This is Alan. I think if I'm not mistaken, the private sector rates are higher, like 8. Is that right, George? You think 8 between 8 and 10 even?
Yeah, they usually they'll run on a sliding scale on the size of the project, but yeah, you'll see them being a little bit higher in the private sector.
Thanks.
thanks.
You're right, Fran. It's a comfort level. I think with your architect, you're going to pay 6% regardless, and the price is going to be about the same because it's all coming on bid anyways. It's a comfort thing, I think, for school districts, and we really like working with Vince. And we used to work a lot with Bob too, but it's been more Vince lately. Is Bob still working, Ed? We haven't seen him.
Oh yeah, Bob is working. He does a lot for the city of Erie schools right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and they know our people too, and they know what they like to see and how we like to see it.
Yeah.
And so I agree with all that. I just thought, I had no idea what an architectural fee would be. So I just thought to keep everybody honest to make sure that we do check that every now and then.
We have 2 capital projects purchases on the agenda for this evening. We've talked about both of these items, the paging system at the middle school, $26,365, and then the DeSantis, the vaporizer cleaner at $1,550. And John checked with DeSantis. Those are about 2 months back ordered, but we asked them to put a rush on that because there are some things that we'd like to use that for this summer as well, which sort of leads us right into one of the things we'd like to use it for this summer, which is our virtual graduation. Let me tell you, first of all, that Matt and I have had significant conversations we've talked with Alan as a board member and as a dad of a senior and a longtime community member. And we've also talked with all the other superintendents. We've talked to the Department of Health and Department of Ed. We have it on pretty solid word from the Department of Health that there will not be any live commencement ceremonies this year. And the one thing that, Alan, this is funny because what came up in our conversation the other day, the one thing that really threw a monkey wrench into all this was the Air Force commencement. Had the Air Force not done that live, that really put people, that really got people upset because they were allowed to do it.
If I could figure out a way to add photo to this, you'd see them all sitting in their dress blues, 8 feet apart on a football field, which is exactly the plan I was going to advocate, and they pulled it off. But of course, it's the Air Force, and it's not Fairfield School District. Right?
Yeah, and we tried. We had a conversation with Department of Health, and they're pretty easy to get along with, the folks at the Department of Health. And one of the former school resource officers, John McEnroe, is working for them now. He was the George, you know him from Northwestern. He was the SRO out there, and so he's working now. He's kind of an enforcement officer for them. So he's the guy that's going around to businesses saying, "Hey, you shouldn't be open right now. Close your doors." And He said the first time is a friendly reminder. The second time is a little more stern, and then sanctions are applied with a third warning. But we talked to them. Even when we move into this yellow status, the group sizes are 25. Hey, Sandy. The group sizes are 25 or fewer. And when we move into green, assuming we do move into green over the summer, those group sizes are still 250 or fewer. Even in green, though, you have to maintain the masks and the social distancing as well. So we don't anticipate, the Department of Health basically told us, don't anticipate being in green anytime soon. Once we move to yellow, we're going to be there for a while. So with that, Matt and I were talking about ways to kind of stand out and be a little bit unique with our graduation. And by the way, one of the early proposals that we had was some type of a parade, and several districts have put that proposal forward to the Department of Health and have been denied a parade opportunity as well. Because here's the thing with the parade. It sounds like a good plan, but if you do get approved for a parade, the responsibility is on the school district to make sure that everyone in the parade, along the parade route, is maintaining social distancing, and that's on the school. And I don't think any school wants to take on that kind of liability or responsibility. So the chances of getting a parade permit approved right now are probably slim anyways. So we were talking about some virtual things. Of course, we have Mr. Bookhammer and who can do a lot of the virtual reality stuff for us. But we came up with what we think is really a nice hybrid approach. Here's what people want to see from what we've been told in surveying and talking to kids. Parents want to see their kid walk across the stage, right? That's something that's an important moment in their lives, and it's something that the kids have. I mean, even if it's a little cliche that you walk across the stage, it's still something that the kids want to do, and it's something that parents want to see their child do. So we're going to make that happen in our plan. That our plan is to allow the kids to walk across the stage. We're going to do it in a safe way, and we're also going to combine that with a virtual ceremony of sorts. So, Matt, you want to give the explanation of how we plan on pulling this off?
Sure. And I think, to add to that, I think one of the ways we ended up here was the idea that one of the things we've tried to do throughout the last month with our seniors is kind of personalize their experience. The social media postings that we've been doing, multiple per day for seniors, aren't just, them. And, I know some places are doing their future plans and stuff like that, but we really wanted to add that personal touch of having teachers comment on each kid, and, talk about how that kid specifically impacts the school and how that kid specifically, kind of embodies the district theme. The same thing with our yard signs. There were a lot of yard signs, but we really wanted to wanted to personalize those for our kids. So we got their names on them. We didn't get their pictures on them, but we did get their names on them for all 142 of the students. And that similarly kind of drove the idea to move past just a virtual event to add something that was a little bit of a blended experience where they did get, as Eric described, the chance to walk across the stage in their cap and gown, get a diploma. Their parents or two guests are with them during that time during the week of May 18th. We record that in addition to recording a personal message from them. And then we put all of this at the end, including speeches from administration, speeches from Alan, speeches from Eric, speeches from summa cum laude, speeches from senior class, president, class speaker, all of those people. Luke recognizing our military students. All of that is compiled into a virtual graduation ceremony video that we can release on the night of graduation. In addition to that video existing on a class of 2020 page that is perpetual, that kind of lives beyond the night of graduation, that has the video for graduation and files for each kid's individual kind of message to the class or message to the school as well. It achieves the thing that we hear a lot about kids wanting to be in the building, about kids wanting to walk across the stage, not wanting their diploma mailed to them, while at the same time kind of jumping through the hoops of the parameters that Eric described. Eric, you described all those well. I just want to add to that the other vehicle related thing to the parade was a stipulation in that any vehicle related event, all the vehicles need to be spaced 6 feet apart as well. So I don't know. I don't know if you mentioned that or not, but I just thought I would throw that in there too as a challenge, some kind of parade event that we were talking about. So, could there be other things we do for the seniors? Yeah, possibly. But as far as graduation is concerned, and getting diplomas to students on and by January 4th, we thought this approach really kind of checked a lot of the boxes for us. The idea of delaying students getting diplomas, we heard from the PA Department of Health that it's unlikely that we'll be in well, it is likely that we'll be in yellow for some time. We don't know how long that is, and it's not a ton of students, but we do have students that need their diplomas, sooner rather than later. In terms of kids heading off to the military, kids heading off to work, things like that. They do need those in hand. I don't want to say, it doesn't have to be that night at 7 o'clock, but pretty darn quick. Some of the kids that may be heading off to college or something like that as well.
So what we're going to do, what we're proposing is, and we have John on board with maintenance as well. Our proposal is that we're going to put a schedule out there, and we're going to allow students to sign up to come in at a time slot of their choosing. They're going to be allowed to bring 2 guests with them. So either mom and dad, or mom and a sibling, or dad and however they want to do that. We realize that might be a bit of a challenge for some blended families and things of that nature. But in order to keep that number of 25 people in the building at one time, we have to do it that way. So we're going to have 5 students come in at a time with their 2 guests, and we're going to spread them out in the auditorium. We'll be there, and we're going to allow that student the experience of getting his or her diploma from the principal and walking across the stage and having a photo taken in the building on the stage as they normally would. We've even gone as far as planning allowing them to still have their silly string some way, shape, or form and have some fun with that. But we want to take it a little bit further than just a commencement ceremony. We want to have make it a fun video. We want to have some outtakes, and we want to have some individual messages that the students can give, because as Matt said, this is going to be out there forever. It's something they're always going to remember. So after the student walks across the stage, has a photo taken, we're going to give the students an opportunity to say something in the camera, a message to his or her class, or a message to the community, a message to his or her family or friends. And we're going to capture that on the video as well. So our 90-minute commencement might take a little bit longer this time on video when you watch it on June 4th, but it'll be pretty thorough, and we think the kids will really appreciate it. We hope that we can kind of splice it together to make it look pretty natural, each kid going across the stage. The challenge is, it would be a lot easier if we had kids come in by homeroom and do this thing alphabetically, but we know the challenges of that. We know the challenges of parents that are working, retail or in the medical field or another essential employee type of position. And we don't want people to have to lose a day's wages to come in for, literally 15 minutes. So we're going to allow folks to sign up whenever it's convenient to them. We're going to do some evening hours and daytime hours over the next starting Matt, May 18th, 16th?
We're going to sign-ups for the diploma event begin on Monday, May 11th. They're open all week, and our first batch of students will begin their diploma events on Monday the following week, May 18th. We'll do that for a week, conclude on the Friday before Memorial Day, and that'll give our videographer about a week and a half to pull together the video.
Now, typically our seniors finish up their school year about a week prior to all of the other students in the district. This year, it's going to be a little bit even sooner than that, really for logistic purposes in getting our cum laude speakers and wrapping that up. And also, collecting their iPads and their textbooks and all that sort of thing. And we'll tie it in with them walking across the stage. Matt still wants to do a personal delivery of caps and gowns to them. So that'll take place similar to the way the sign distribution took place, which was a lot of fun for kids, I think, the ones who were up at 9 a.m. at least, or 10 a.m. But we'll still pass out the caps and gowns individually to students, and then they'll be able to wear them when they come in for their video. So look, it's not perfect. I think it's better than what else, the other options that we've heard out there. I think it's better than sitting in a car and having your name announced. It's certainly better than having your diploma mailed to you. And it does check off some boxes, like Matt said. It allows them to come back into the building, walk across the stage, be handed their diploma, or have it slid across the table, however we decide to do that safely. And then we're going to have some space in between all those folks that come in. We're going to have a little gap in between each group so that we can disinfect the areas appropriately and make sure everybody is safe. Thoughts, comments, questions?
This is Fran. I think that is beautiful. I think you guys have checked every box. I just think it's great. I know from a very good source that QLN is trying to do a video graduation for all the local schools. They're going to do some sort of video and have them all on there, and have lots of local celebrities giving advice. And local celebrities, I mean, like even some national. I mean, so you've got your Tom Ridge, and you've got Nick Scott. I mean, just people out there and about, and they also want to get some teachers and principals and administration involved in that to give advice to the kids. And in trying to put it all together, I mean, just knowing what they're going through on it, it's hard. But you really added that personal touch that is going to be missing from something that complete strangers, so I mean QLN is going to do for them. And I just think it's beautiful. I think I don't know how much time it took you guys to come up with that, but I just love it.
Yeah, what it also allows us to do, Fran, is it allows us to this, I shouldn't even say this while this is being recorded, but it allows us to forego the Department of Health approval process, because we're going to keep that size under 25, which you're allowed to do. Which confuses me, because I went to Lowe's over the weekend and there must have been 500 people in the store. But, we're only allowed to have 25 at a time. So we're going to accomplish that without really having to go out and ask permission to do that necessarily.
Well, why don't you take the stage to Lowe's?
Yeah, right. Yeah, when we heard that cars had to be spaced 6 feet apart too, that really blew the whole, bring everyone into the parking lot. I don't know a parking lot in Erie. What, maybe Waldameer? Where could you pull off the casino? Yeah. Where could you pull off having cars 6 feet apart and have 150 of them? Yeah. Alan, what do you think?
Well, obviously, under all circumstances that we are facing, it's a difficult choice. I'm very proud of how hard you and Eric and Matt worked at putting this together. I'm gonna hold my powder, if you will, to get a live event. I know that's not feasible. It's not legal at this point, and we obviously don't want to put anybody at risk. But I think that having the hybrid approach is at the very place where they would get their diploma in a live event, as we normally would, is very meaningful. I look forward to participating as a parent, as a board member, and a community member in this. So thank you very much for all your thinking and hard work on it.
And we understand that there may be some families who say, hey, we're not coming there with 4 other kids. It's just not happening, and we'll make accommodations for those folks. If someone says, we want to come by ourselves, can you make a time slot for us? We'll absolutely do that. And Matt had a good point too. We want this to happen on their graduation day. We want it to happen June 4th and publish it. If by some miracle in July or August, they say, hey, you're allowed to have gatherings now, It's not too late for us to throw a big cookout for the class. We'll go out to Pleasant Ridge Park, or we'll go down to the Burger property down, and we'll do something fun for them. We have enough people in the community that would allow us to make that happen, and we have a very generous Fairview School Foundation that would support that. So if by chance we can get together again, we will. But we think this is really the next best scenario, and it gives them some of the things that they want to do. Every year after commencement, there's a line of kids standing by that sign along the grassy knoll there to have their photo taken with that Fairview High School sign. And this will give them the opportunity to do that and get pictures with their family. Although we're only going to allow 2 family members or guests inside the building, they could have 10 of them waiting for them in the car if they want, and they can celebrate outside however they choose to do that, and take photos and do whatever they need to do. So we're excited about it. It's going to be time consuming for our staff to be there. Kelly Millay will need to be there. We'll need to have custodial support there. Lori Hitt, because it's an auditorium event, she likes to be there for sound and lighting and things like that. And we have to line up some photographers and videographers, but we think that we can do that pretty reasonably. We were going to have an agenda item tonight to approve a cost for that, but because we have Carl on board, we think we can do it relatively inexpensively and under the $2,000 threshold. And Matt, you talked to Carl today, and he's all in.
Yeah, I did. He was pretty fired up. Yeah, we had a good conversation, and it's going to work out well for him. And he's got some, not only is he excited, he's got some ideas already percolating in his head about how to make it look good and what some of the best angles and approaches will be. He's fired up.
And this just isn't, Carl's really not just any photographer. I mean, he's a Fairview graduate. He lives in Fairview, but he also had an interview recently to be the Minnesota Vikings official photographer for an NFL football team. So he's pretty legit. He does a really nice job with his work. You've seen it because we use his pictures on social media all the time. He's a pretty talented guy. So we are going to, Matt, did you do your video yet to roll that information out to seniors?
I did a school-wide video that alluded to just the one part of that alluded to just the basics of graduation, with the idea that we'd push more detailed information out to seniors and families toward the end of the week.
Good. Okay. If you have any specific thoughts or ideas, ways that we can enhance that, please let us know. And otherwise, we're gonna keep moving forward with that and get the plans ready. Seniors will be happy to know probably that their last day is May 15th, a little earlier. For teachers, that means wrapping things up. The teachers who have seniors, wrapping things up a little bit sooner so that Matt and Luke can calculate the summa cum laude folks and align those speakers. So Alan, we'll plan a time for you to come in and give your remarks on the stage, and we'll videotape that, and we'll do that. We'll all do that individually, as well as the class speaker, the teacher. That this year is Hank Barber, right, Matt?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and then the students who will speak. We have 5 student speakers, as well as the class president and the class's choice as a speaker. So those folks will all come in. We'll set those up individually, probably after they walk. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Moving on to some of the committees here, since we're doing that as a whole, education and policy. Justin, you want to take those 2 items?
Sure. The first one is the job description for the position that Deborah Lavin is vacating due to her retirement. Really, the significant change there is that has been an attendance clerk position since Deborah's had it, and we've kind of transitioned those positions to attendance secretary in the other 2 buildings. So we're really just updating that title, and Steve worked on some really minor changes in that language to mirror Alyssa Frith and Katie. Yeah, what's her married name? Not Miller anymore. The attendance clerks or the attendance secretaries in the other buildings.
Quadri.
Quadri. Thanks.
I would have said Miller.
Any questions about that job description?
By the way, that's just approval of the job description. We're not necessarily asking for approval of the position yet. We're not going to bring forward any support staff positions until we know the status of the 2021 school year, as we said.
Yeah, and currently that is only posted internally. So we'll keep you up to date on if any internal applicants show interest. If there's no questions about that, the next thing is purchases over 2,000. And really, this spreadsheet evolved a few years back. This is really renewals. We just try to capture any renewal purchase over 2,000. We usually get it approved in May so that once July 1st hits, our office staff can go in and start approving these things. If you look at the spreadsheet, it's broken down as district purchases. So things you'll see on there are student information system, Power School. EduLink is our technology or our software we use to evaluate teachers. If you jump to, any of those buildings, the elementary school, literally Reflex, eSpark, those are all software programs. So those happen every year. Those have all kind of been budgeted for back in November when we started that process. So if you're looking through that and you have any questions on any of those purchases, feel free to let me know or any of the building principals.
Thank you, Justin. Ed, budget and finance, got a few items there.
Yeah, let me just present the screen here again, if I can. So the first item is lunch prices. They don't change for this next year. Elementary is at $2.45, middle school and high school is at $2.60. Those are the same as this current year. So we just need a motion to approve those for this next year. The service provider evaluations. So what I do each year is I go through and evaluate our various service providers. Are Berkheimer's the tax collector for earned income tax and local services tax. Mark Turnley does our annual audit. We have some doctors and dentists, Dr. Andrick, Dr. Kim, Dr. Leone. Banks where we have our banking done and investments, Erie Bank, First National Bank. We have an employee benefits consultant, HBKW. They are currently called Hub. HHSDR, of course, is our architect, insurance consortium. So our property liability umbrella vehicle coverage, that is through a consortium. We've been part of that now. This is the third year, I believe. We'll continue to be part of that going forward. I think there's a lot of benefits to being part of that group. There's a self-insurance piece that we may get back eventually. Insurance management for workers' comp insurance. Knox Law Firm, they provide our labor, bond counsel, and special ed services. PISLOF is a place where we could do investments as a state organization. And of course, the Quinn Law Firm, Attorney Joseph, our solicitor. So we go through and review those, and we're not recommending any changes for this next year. You'll see a motion come back for those various appointments. The next item, ML schedules. So we have ML schedules is our facility scheduling software. We can have anyone go online and make a request to use a particular room or a gym or a field through the software. The cost for this next year is $2,070. This includes a couple of enhancements. The cost this current year is $1,800, and we can go with the standard upgrade, the standard I guess renewal would be $1,870. Another $200 gets us some enhancements to the software. We're still working with Lindsay and John to see if that's something that we want to build into next year's renewal. We may just come back with a standard renewal recommendation at $1,870. And then the work order system, John Ficetti uses that for various people in the district to report areas, equipment, buildings, anything that needs to be repaired, any kind of supply needs. They'll put a work order request through for those things, and John and his crew respond to it based on using the system. And again, here, I talked to John about this earlier. There's a couple of enhancements that take it to 2,070. The standard system is 1,870 for this next year. And John's going to take a look at those enhancements to see if that's something that he would want to recommend for 2021. So we'll bring back motions for those two software packages on the 18th. The copier bid. So I put the spreadsheet out on the shared folder if you ever want to look at this, but we did the bid a few months ago. We had 4 vendors involved. So this first company, you see ComDoc, they're the current provider. And then we also had Hagen Business Machines, Kubinski Business Machines, and Schwab, James B. Schwab. So Schwab, Kubinski, and Hagen, they're local companies. ComDoc is local. They're more of a regional company. They're based out of Buffalo or Rochester. But a lot of their customers are in this area. In fact, I think they have the entire Gannon contract. We made a change 5 years ago to take every laser and inkjet printer out of the district. We probably pulled 70 plus printers out of the district and replaced those with 11 copiers and 2 larger machines in the resource room at the high school. And that's it. We don't allow any small printers, other than I think the photo lab at the high school has a couple of color inkjet printers for their photos, but that's really it. So the bid was done. We did the analysis. That's what the spreadsheet is. And ComDoc won the bid. You can see the total cost of about $38,624.50. That is about $3,000 less than the current year cost. What we did with this bid spec is we reduced the number of machines. So in the elementary, we typically have, this year we have 4 machines. We're going to 2 machines next year. Middle school is the same. They're going from 4 to 2. The central office has 1. And the high school is, they have 3. They're going to remain at 3 for this next year. The high school's got some things they need to handle within guidance and some other areas where they need the 3rd machine. So we're reducing the count by four machines for this next year. That equates to a savings on the lease of about $3,000. We're also getting with those machines the ability to manage those copiers. So there's a really good management software called PaperCut that allows us to manage users and to limit the number of copies, both black and white and color, that each person can run on the various machines. So this lease starts up July 1. We're bringing a motion back to you and recommending ComDoc for the new 5-year lease. And the last item I have here is ECA supply quotes. These are also on the shared folder. Give me 1 minute here. So this spreadsheet shows a summary of student activities. The total is $21,242. You can see how that is allocated to the various suppliers based on the bids that they won. So Lindsay's involved in evaluating these bids and making sure that what is being bid is based on the spec that was provided. And I assume, I mean, I haven't talked to anyone yet, but I assume we're going to hold these until we actually know that these activities are going to happen for this next year. So we may have you approve these, but we'll hold the purchase orders until we know for sure that that we're going to move forward with the activities.
Thank you, Ed. Alan, I'm looking at personnel matters. We have, excuse me, we have 3, 4, 5 summer school instructors. That's our traditional social studies summer school that we've been offering for the last several years to allow students to knock out their required social studies course over the summer. And students pay a small fee for that. We have our ESY teachers on there. Now, the ESY teachers are typically our learning support folks, ESY meaning extended school year. Those are the teachers for students who have ESY as an option in their IEPs. This isn't the same as maybe a summer program that we may choose to offer this year for students who need to just catch up a little bit from these last couple of months. That could be happening as well. Typically also on here, Keith would have his teachers as well as aides to support the teachers in the classrooms. But because of the uncertainty on whether or not ESY is going to be face-to-face or virtual, we didn't want to put the aides on there quite yet. We know we need the teachers, even in a virtual scenario. We wouldn't necessarily need those aides in a virtual scenario. However, because this is taking place in the 1920 school year, George, we'd be obligated to pay those folks if we employed them. So we held off on putting their names on there for now to see whether or not we absolutely need them. But we know that we need the teachers, so we've put them on there. We have one transfer. Mrs. Parrish at the elementary school is going to be going into a first grade classroom from her current learning support position. And we have one hire to for your consideration this evening to introduce. And I have to tell you, I always get excited about our new hires because they're so enthusiastic and they want to get here and change the world. This young lady she was really, really impressive in her throughout the process and her final interview with me. Her name is Carling Burke, and she's from the Mill Creek area, but she's been teaching the last couple of years as the speech therapist in Union City. And we haven't stolen from Union City before, so I don't feel too badly about this one. I was just happy that they didn't bring me an Iroquois person this time. But Keith, do you want to tell the group a little bit about Carling?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kincaid. Like Dr. Kincaid had said, Carling Burke, from the beginning of the interview and hiring process, she was impressive from her video, from the time that we sat down as a committee and interviewed her. She was top notch. We are getting someone, I think, who's going to be great. She's going to take our speech and language program to a whole nother level. She is from Erie, Pennsylvania. She's a graduate of Clarion University. She's been teaching in the Union City area school district as their only speech and language pathologist since 2018. And she also works another job as a speech and language pathologist at the Achievement Center, and she's been doing that since December of 2016. Along with that, she is an American Speech Language Hearing Association member, and she also knows American Sign Language. We're thrilled to get her. We're excited to have her on board.
We have the other hires that we're working on right now. The next one will be for the fifth grade math position. We have that narrowed down to a couple of finalists. We'll be doing those final discussions with those folks this week, and we'll have that name to come forward at the next meeting. We're also working on that guidance counselor position at the middle school. What else, Justin? K and 1? K and 1. Okay. Alan, before you look at the agenda, just one other thing I wanted to mention. At a couple of months ago in small committee, in our committee, Fran, I recall, who else is in that, the ECA committee? I know it's Fran. Okay. Fran, Pam, and Alan, right? Yeah. So
Yes,
I gave that group some information about Fairview Park and Rec. They had put a proposal forward to the school district as well as the township, the Fairview Township, that they were in need of some funds to stay afloat, and the township provided those funds to them. Our committee here asked that Nate from Park and Rec come to the board meeting and present. Well, that was the board meeting that got canceled, so he wasn't able to come. I got a phone call today from a township supervisor who's really concerned about the program. They're out of money, and so they need financial assistance. So I told them that I would allow Nate that opportunity on the 18th to speak to the board. And so you can hear what he has to say. You can make a decision. I don't want to speak for this small committee that we had the discussion, but the amount that they asked for was $18,000 from both the township and the district as a one-time cash infusion to keep the operation running. I don't know that our committee was interested in that amount, but I do know that they were interested in helping out in some way. So we'll hear what Nate has to say and how they plan to turn things around. They're really hurting right now because there are no programs running and they still have wages and things to pay over there. So he will be with us. He'll join us virtually on the 18th, and you can hear him out. And I have some suggestions on maybe something we can do. It's not a program that I want to see end. We have a longstanding relationship with them, and they provide a pretty good service to the community and to the district for some athletic programs for pre-PIAA programs, 5th and 6th grade particularly. So we'll talk to Nate and hear him out, and you guys can make a decision on that. I know the township gave them the $18,000, and then additionally, the Park and Rec does all of the scheduling for the township facilities. So the Brugger property, as well as the pavilion out at Pleasant Ridge Park. And then they take a small portion, the Park and Rec does, they take a small portion for managing that. So the cut that, I think they take 20%. So the township had, according to Pete Krause, had $11,000 coming to them from rentals. So in addition to the $18,000, they also gave them back that $11,000 check to try to keep them running here for the next couple of months. So they do need some help. We'll hear what they have to say, and you can make a decision moving forward. And Alan, that's it for Committee of the Whole. If you want to look at the agenda, it's a pretty short agenda. I think you just have, how many motions, Miles? 2.
Okay. Doing consent agenda review. We have business operations. The consent agenda items included the purchase over 2,000, the Fastbridge Training Yearbook Senior Supplement, the IU5 LIEP contract, capital project purchases, the paging system, the vaporizer cleaner, the FMS attendance secretary job description, as Justin described, and then personal matters will stand alone. Looking at 1 through 4, anyone wish to have any one of those 4 withdrawn from consent agenda for individual voting? Hearing none, we'll include them all in consent agenda items. We will adjourn the Committee of the Whole, which of course you know as of tonight's agenda, our Committee of the Whole included our subcommittees, so our board committees, so we're good there. So if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, just standing at your place, and hand to heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Since we last met, we've had another one of our community members fall victim to the COVID-19 illness. I'd like to have a moment of silence for our community members and others in our country, in our state, our country, and around the world who've suffered loss due to this pandemic. Thank you. Any visitors online wish to be recognized this evening? Provide public comment. Hearing none, we'll move on to business operations. Consent agenda items, committee of the whole. I move board approval of the consent agenda items for business operations as presented, including purchases over $2,000, the 2020-2021 IU5 LIEP contract, capital project purchases, and the FMS attendance secretary job description.
Second.
Second by Eric, I believe. Roll
Yep,
call
this is Eric.
vote.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Ms. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin, Mrs. Sobin,
Perhaps your microphone is off.
you can nod or shake your head no.
Okay. Technical difficulties here, Mrs. Coleman. Go on, Molly.
Mr. Natale,
Yes. Personnel matters. I move board approval of personnel matters as recommended and or read by the superintendent and as identified on the personnel list be approved, and with the stipulation that the positions be filled only if the program or activity is to be conducted as determined by board action.
Second, New.
Thank you, Fran. May I have a roll call vote?
Ms. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin, Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. That concludes tonight's meetings. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your presentations from everyone and all of your comments. Very well, much appreciated. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you all next time. Feel free to reach out through email to your fellow board members or A-team staff for any questions or concerns until then. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Adjourned.
Thank you.
Not this board meeting. Not this board meeting.